Okay, hello everyone. It is great to have all of you here with us today. I know we still have some people filing in, but I'm going to go ahead and get us started. My name is Tony Harris. I'm the Action Team Coordinator with Strong Towns, and many of you may already know me. As you're probably aware, we've invited Monty Anderson and Bernice Radel to speak on behalf of Neighborhood Evolution today as part of our Community Action Lab program. Just a little bit about the Community Action Lab initiative. Over the past year, I've been working alongside our director, Edward Erfurt, to carry out the Community Action Lab program in 4 different locations across the US and Canada. I think we have participants registered from each of those locations today. So that would include Lake County, Florida, Norman, Oklahoma, Medicine Hat, Alberta, and Chisholm, Minnesota. And Edward and Chuck Marone, our president, have actually just finished our 3rd workshop in Medicine Hat this week, which I think is really exciting. So yeah, this program has been an opportunity to shift conversations relevant to growth, economics, and development in all of these places. So each Community Action Lab program consists of 3 public events over the course of 1 calendar year, and we've had virtual meetings with our action teams and leadership teams on a regular basis to explore topics and issues more thoroughly in each of these areas. So if you're interested in learning more about the Community Action Lab program, you can go to strongtowns.org/CAL, C-A-L, and from there you can access more information and relevant resources that we've made available to the general public and applicants for upcoming years. And then if you haven't heard already, we do have courses available that capture the Community Action Lab learnings, and you can access those by going to academy.strongtowns.org. And I'm going to share both of those links that I said out loud in the meeting chat for reference. Anyway, on the Academy site, you'll be able to find free curated content that's relevant to each of the Community Action Labs. So we're really excited to share these materials with you and with locals, since we've been developing them alongside groups of city staff and concerned citizens for many months now. So thank you for taking the time to be with us again. I know you're excited for this webinar. So I'd like to introduce Bernice and Monty to you so that they can share some of their wisdom and work related to small scale development systems. A little bit about each of them. We'll start with Bernice. Bernice is based out of Buffalo, New York, and she owns Buffalo Development and Little Wheel Restoration Company, which is a full-service real estate firm focused on reviving underutilized and vacant spaces in both her community and Niagara Falls. Bernice is devoted to blending urban design, affordability, preservation, and energy efficiency together to make places that are more resilient and prosperous. Bernice holds a Bachelor of Science in Urban Planning and Regional Analysis from Buffalo State College. And then we have Monty Anderson, who is the president of Options Real Estate Investments Incorporated, a real estate firm that focuses on cultivating sustainable neighborhoods in Southern Dallas and Northern Ellis counties. Monty is an advocate who focuses on incremental development practices and can often be found educating and speaking in different locations across the country. Monty was a co-founder of the Incremental Development Alliance and is the founding president of the North Texas chapter of Congress for the New Urbanism. So our team here at Strong Towns is really inspired by the work that Neighborhood Evolution does and the way that they do it. And I'm really delighted to just have this opportunity to elevate Monty and Bernice. So we will hold on to some time for questions and answers after their presentation. But for now, I'm going to hand the stage over to Bernice and Monty. Welcome.
Thank you, Tony. We're glad to be here. And thank you all.
Yeah,
thank you all for all our friends at Strong Towns. We go back, both Bernice and I go back to the very beginning. We were at the first national gathering of Strong Towns. So it's really good to be here today. So Tony's already introduced Bernice, but I won't say a lot more about her. But Bernice is maybe young and she may be small, but she is a powerful force in the incremental development world, and really has lots of good opinions and good ideas, and is very creative, and is really known for doing something with nothing. And that's where she started, and we'll hear more about that today. And myself, I started out as a commercial real estate agent, actually. And then over the time, because I was so desperate to get development in the southern Dallas County where I come from, which is the have-not side of Dallas. You know, in Dallas, you have two halves. You have the very rich in the north, and then you have the south. And that's changing. But that's what I spent. That's how I got into real estate development. It's really out of pure desperation, trying to get somebody to do some things in my part of the city. And Mike Keene, who's listening with us tonight, comes from South Bend. Mike is the accidental developer. He was a college professor at the University of Indiana, and then did some work at Notre Dame also. And he's also studied sustainability and consulted and just studied communities for many years. And Mike is known as for the birthday chair, which we'll see in a little bit, and also for these community meetups, these living room meetups that have become so special and so important to the city of South Bend. And Jim Kuhlman is started off as in architecture and construction, and doing work in the missing middle, working in places that are more affluent, that are really tougher, actually tougher sometimes to work in. And he's known for construction and zoning and urban design. Jim helps us with a lot of really tough technical problems, and he can actually, Bernice can actually, and I can actually talk, and Jim can actually write it down what we're talking about. It's just amazing what he can do. He's also a Cub Scout leader and been very active in his own neighborhoods in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So we're going to talk today about Strong Towns principles of reinforcing your ecosystems. And so the number one is fix your rules. Number two is improve your housing stock. And number three is how to get your ecosystem people working. And that's really where we're going to focus, is on this ecosystem building. And we're going to start with the problems that communities are facing. And nearly all communities, whether you're a rich community, a middle or poor community, you're facing these same things. And it's lack of local wealth, vacant spaces, okay, whether it be land or buildings, and affordable housing. And so wherever we go, we hear this all the time. It's very affluent neighborhoods. What's the problem? Affordable housing. Very poor neighborhoods. What's the problem? Affordable housing. And I like to say that affordable housing is a symptom of the problem. It's not really the problem. Income is the problem. Building wealth is the problem. And if we could do more of that, we wouldn't have affordable housing issues. But now we got to work on both, because we do have affordable housing problems. So development ecosystem issues. So lack of affordable financing. Lack of affordable properties, bad financing options, especially for small deals. And we're held to the same standards doing a small development as people are doing a 50-story building. So the regulations, banking regulations are the same. Poor zoning policies and outdated properties. So the solution by us is here's the basis of our program, and what we do is that we believe the locals are the answer. So readying the locals to take the lead to building a better building environment, to nurturing the small development ecosystem, and helping you, the locals, create the neighborhood of your choice. You're the ones who are going to really shape your neighborhood, not people from out of town typically. And we are doers. The four of us are doers. We're all real estate developers. We call ourselves town makers, okay, but we do real estate developments. And we teach and we coach. We're not really consultants. We teach, coach, and we actually do this work. Our common denominator, and this is the real secret sauce, and most of you will miss this, and most of the people we teach all the time miss it, is our love for our communities. It's that simple. If you can love your community, if you can commit to your community, you can make really big, magical differences. So the pillars of our work are three things: farming, finance, and form. Farming is, many types, many skills you do farming. Real estate people that sell, they sell on a farm, and that's what we're talking about. Picking a place, stay there, work that area for the rest of your life, cultivate it, and make it beautiful all around you. Finance, you got to figure out how to do. You got to figure out how to make money at this business. So we like to say finance is the most important thing. That money is the most important thing in these deals, but doing good is equal. Now, Bernice will quite often say doing good is first and finance is equal. So she leans more to the left and I lean to the right. So you can tell where we come from here. And form is the architecture, neighborhoods people love to live in. People that, when you love your neighborhood, you're less inclined to not pick up the trash. You're more inclined to build, to plant trees. You're more inclined to do community gardens and those kinds of things. So who's going to do this work? So this is where the flywheel comes into effect. And who's going to do this work? We're all going to do this work. See, this is not just something for real estate developers to do. As you can see here, we're going to talk a lot today in the ending times here about the 12 steps of town making. But if you're an architect, you should be doing this work. If you're a janitor, you should be doing this work. If you're a real estate agent, you can do this work. If you're a professor or a teacher, you can do this work, or a title company, insurance agents. And if you look in the middle of this, in the middle is the town maker, the developer, the small incremental developer. And that's the way we work. We're in the middle of everything. And so in this case here, let me give you an example. Let's say that you're an architect today, and you're working all over the country designing hospitals and stuff, but you hate it. You don't like doing this work. So you're working all over the place, and you're doing the work, and you work for a big company, and you decide you want to do this kind of work. You want to be a town maker. So what you would do is first quit your job and start working in your farm doing architecture work. You may do bathroom remodels, or create new storefronts for someone. You may do houses or commercial buildings, but you work in your farm. So you get the flywheel going by working in your farm. And while you're working in your farm, all of a sudden you'll see a property to buy. You'll see an opportunity. You'll see a little building you can renovate. And if you're a porter, let's say I had a few years ago, a guy came to me and he said, "Monty, I've heard you talk. I want to be a small scale developer. I want to be an incremental developer, but I don't have any skills. I don't have any education." And I said, "Well, can you pick up trash off a parking lot?" And he said, "Yeah, I can pick up trash off of the parking lot." And this guy started picking up trash on parking lots in the area of his farm. And he started doing it over and over. And finally, one day he found a building to buy because he had made a little bit of money. And he bought that building, and it had a couple of spaces to rent. And then he bought some more, and then he bought a house. And today, this guy's got huge contracts with the state, cleaning freeways and stuff. He's still a porter, but he's also a developer. And the same thing goes with a city employee. You're working in your city, and maybe you decide you want to buy a fourplex. And so some people that are in this development business may never buy big properties. They may just do small properties, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people do really well with small single family properties. Some of the people here will be investors. Some will be cheerleaders. Some will be your plumbers. Not everybody's going to be a developer. It takes the whole community. If it takes a village to raise a child, it takes the whole community to rebuild these cities. Now, how do you start? Now, let's say that you say, "Okay, well, Monty, Bernice, I'm ready to get going. I want to do this. How do you start?" And I used to call myself an opportunist until I read the definition of opportunist. And it said I'm something like you're a carpetbagger, you're kind of this sleazy, deal maker. And so I marked out the opportunist, and I say, I'm looking for the opportunity. So in my farm, what I'm looking for, when I say this, is I'm looking for a building to purchase, or a piece of land, or a project to work on. And so typically I'm looking for something cheap and ugly sometimes, because that's where the deals are. Sometimes they're cheap and ugly, or they're just vacant. It's a set of circumstances that makes it possible to do something. That's what I'm looking for. Bernice?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Monty. I always love hearing Monty talk because he's kind of like a preacher, right? He's like, this is the ideal of community. And I always, it's just so important. So, and just to bring it all full circle, I started as a maintenance coordinator, minimum wage maintenance coordinator in real estate. So when you think about the flywheel, I started as running a maintenance team. I was 21 years old. I didn't know what I was doing, but I got exposed to real estate. And after I left that job 4 years later, I started my own company called Buffalo. So that's what's really important in that flywheel. But so now what we're going to do is we're going to show you some strategies. We want to show you, you're sitting at home, hanging out, probably covered in a blanket, drinking some tea, saying, what am I here listening for? We want to inspire you. We want to give you some strategies to take home. Everyone has a struggle in their community, and we work all around the country trying to solve these problems, right? So let's talk about them. So the first thing we're talking about is farming. One of our pillars is farming, right? Hold on, Monty. Yeah, there you go. And so when one of our pillars is farming, and the real big thing that we talk about when you farm is you embrace your entrepreneurs. And why do you embrace your entrepreneurs? Because your entrepreneurs are your key. They are your business owners. They shovel the snow when it snows. They're the ones employing the jobs. A lot of people miss this. They think developers are the big people and everybody is, you know, secondary. No, when I look at a development project, I always think the entrepreneur is the center of it all. That's my opinion, right? That you, without the pie shop owner or the tax owner, business owner or whatever, you almost have, you don't have a project. So these people are really critical. Next. So what is a strategy that in your communities that you can do to encourage small business? Well, embracing your mixed use buildings. And a lot of people, a lot of communities miss it because their zoning code doesn't work. You know, they require parking, etc. So we're going to give you some strategies here on mixed use. Next. This is actually one of the projects that I've worked on here in Buffalo. She's beautiful now, but when I first bought her, just like what Monty said, she was vacant. She was very green. I called her the Jolly Green Giant. You know, just completely sort of abandoned mixed use building. But these mixed use buildings are really critical to our fabric. These are the postcard buildings. You know, there are missing middle buildings. And this is this is 11 units, 2 storefronts, with 9 apartments. And what I did was creatively finance this with a partner, so that way we could keep the apartments from $550 a month to $850 a month. Everything is affordable, naturally affordable. And how we did that, because a lot of people say they go in, this has got to be a $4 million project, we got to renovate, we got to do all these things. Incremental was the way to keep it affordable. Incremental. When you see that mansard roof right here, this ugly kind of brown mansard roof, that's my office, by the way. Do you think I want an ugly mansard roof? No. But what I cared more about was the $75 extra per month charge I would have to pass on to my tenants if I removed that and restored, you know, there's no transom windows under it. If there were transom windows, I probably wouldn't have this conversation. But to restore a whole storefront and spend 50 grand on it, I just didn't want to do it. So we creatively thought incremental was the way to keep it more affordable. And in turn, we have 2 businesses that are good, in good shape. We have a fully occupied 9-unit building that's affordable. And if you, this isn't, sadly, we don't have a lot of time to talk about finances and structure, but if you want to ask how to finance deals like this, we'd be happy to tell you in the comments. Next. The next one we want to refer to is in South Bend. This is the Botany Shop. Next, the Botany Shop is owned by Mike Keene. The Botany Shop is like a plant store. Everyone says they need a plant store. Everybody loves a plant store. But what's really important about why this plant store works is because Mike is able to keep this very reasonably priced, because there are 2 apartments in the background that pay some of that mortgage down, that add value. And again, when we're talking about farming your neighborhood, right? Building good juju, you know, in your neighborhood with your neighbors, you're working on also building good entrepreneurs. Well, the Botany is a great example of somebody who commits to community. He, you know, donates plants to the local, whatever they need, to the downtown Main Street planters, etc. It's the entrepreneurs that keep our community alive, and we don't do enough for them. We can never do enough. It is the hardest business to do, and we need to do more. Next. Here's the inside of Botany. But, you know, the point is, these entrepreneurs, it give good appearance inside and out. They're the ones active in the pop-ups and festivals. They're just regularly there. They are our community. In fact, where I live, I love because of the small businesses within. The houses are great, but it's the coffee that I love. It's the, you know, and Botany is no different.
Okay, thank you, Bernice. So we're going to look at a couple of case studies of massive amounts of entrepreneurs. In fact, the next 2 projects we'll look at case studies have about 120 small local entrepreneurs. And the first one is DeSoto Marketplace. And if you look on the front of the CNU website, you will see part of the DeSoto Marketplace there. In the DeSoto Market, we all have these, right? These strip centers. And this is no different than anything else that you've seen in any city built in the 60s. But the good thing about these strip centers is at least they were built with houses around them instead of on the freeway, the big boxes. I don't know what we're going to do with those. I mean, that's another story we're going to have to figure out one day. But what we had here was a strip center with small tenants in it, like the Chinese place, the pizza place, the dry cleaners. And then you had the box that used to be a grocery store in the beginning, a 26,000 square foot grocery store. And then it became a hardware store. And then it was empty. And I happened to acquire it while it was empty for very cheap money. I mean, very cheap. It's a 50,000 square foot building. And the only thing I knew to do at the time was to put a 99-cent store in there and get rid of it because I didn't want it because it's ugly. But the mayor of the city came to me and said, Monty, would you do something different? And if you look here, this is the entry into the property, and the road is a strode. You know, it's one of these bad, really wide roads. And so what we had to do, we first started to think about putting something on the edge of the road. And it was so bad that we said, no, let's turn it inside. And we did this. So we cut up the concrete and we put trailers in the parking lot and began to create the urbanism inside the property instead of on the street side. And what we had to do was we had to change the zoning. And there's the mayor in one of the pictures, the blue suit, who challenged us to do something better. We had to change the zoning. We had to get them. And when they said, would you do this? The first thing I said was, would you do away with all the parking requirements? And they said, yes, no parking required. I said, will you let me park on the grass? Yes. Will you let me serve alcohol? Yes. Will you let me do a tattoo parlor? Yes. Will you let me, would you let me share grease trap with small restaurants? They said, yes to everything. So desperation was on my side in this case of getting the right zoning I needed. So here is the box here, and this looks like a mall, doesn't it? So you got all these little bitty spaces. You can see they're like 500 square feet and 100, and here's a couple of big ones. So here's the main entry up here, and this is the back of the house, of the shopping center, and we split it up into small spaces, and we began to lease those spaces out to local entrepreneurs. In the city of DeSoto, where this is located, told me that there was no entrepreneurs in our town. That's what they said. They said, we've got people that go to work in Dallas and come back, but there's no entrepreneurs. And they were completely wrong. But the first thing we had to do was come up with a community coaching method, which we did. And then we got all these little entrepreneurs. We Thai food and barbecue and roofers and different kind of people. We mixed them all together. They didn't want it to be a flea market. And so we had the challenge of doing small entrepreneurs, but not a flea market. And so we created these little windows across the front. We opened these up. This was a blank wall. And then what we did was we put these little kitchens in. These are like 400 square feet each. You could serve out the front window. And then we leased them. We were able to combine all the little 7 restaurants into one grease trap. And so we were able to share a few spaces. And then we were able to keep the rent down because I had a partnership with the DeSoto Economic Development Corporation where they master leased this space. And then I helped sublease these spaces to the little entrepreneurs. But without them, it wouldn't have worked to start. Now today, 5 years later, they're out and it's running on its own. And they got a pretty good return for their money, the money they put into it. And so also very interesting here, none of these people closed down during COVID. They were able to turn their inside out and do to go. And so there's my youngest entrepreneur there who was a snow cone operator. He was 11 years old and his sister was 13. And you can see the traders out front. And inside, we stripped the floor, we left the ceiling in, and we built these architectural metal partitions to divide the entrepreneurs. And we got everything from African wear to hair salons to clothing to a dance studio. And then we have small offices that rent from $250 to $500 per month. And the interesting thing about this is these rates, these $250 to $500 a month rates are extremely high. They're like $20 a square foot. Okay. In an area that was getting like $6 a square foot. but because we downsized them so low, we could still keep the price down and still get a high enough rate per square foot to make the real estate deal work. And you real estate people out there will understand what I'm talking about when I talk about price per square foot. So going further into the future, I also got them to let me do residential on the site. So here's the trailers, and I got them to let me put a little bit of residential in, and this is the next phase and where we're working now. We'll have these little flats in here that are around like 400 to 600 square foot, and that's in the process of happening now. And that's what it looks like today. So it went from an abandoned shopping center to this vibrant, cool place. In fact, I was there yesterday, and I had to pinch myself. It was so, I just couldn't believe it was working, and it's working on its own. It doesn't take a lot of overhead and management of the space. We do have to clean it. You know, we do have to do a lot of leases. And as a commercial real estate company like I was, I had to learn to be more like an apartment manager with short-term leases. And so those are a few of the challenges. And as Bernice said, we're always glad to talk about these things. Now, Tyler Station was an old manufacturing plant where wax paper was discovered in Dallas, in southern Dallas, a place called Oak Cliff. But the good thing was it had a light rail station right beside it with no parking lot. So I got this transit-oriented development. You see all the smokestacks on the roof. It had 500,000 pounds of smokestacks on the roof. It was a polluter of the air. It was a polluter of the water. It was a polluter of the soil. And everybody that looked at it wanted to tear it down and put apartments in. Well, the neighborhood around it was not going to have it. The neighborhood around this facility, this is zoned industrial. Okay, there's your light rail station. They weren't having it as apartments. And we didn't really need apartments there anyway, because we had a lot of housing already. And so we turned it into a collaboration village. And we call it manufacturing meeting collaboration. It has a natural workforce and entrepreneurial development, vibe to it and concept to it. It has no executive director here. We do have a property manager and cleaning people and landscapers, but there is no on-site person here operating this. And you can see all these little boxes. See all these boxes? These are all tenants. There is 70 tenants in this 110,000 square foot, 400 foot long building. There are 70 tenants, and it stays 100% occupied at all times. See, here's the rail side where the heavy rail used to deliver, toxic waste, making materials. And this is what we did with it today. We actually faced the retail to the rail station because the two ends of the building were both on Strodes. So there's nothing good on the two buildings on each side. And so inside the building, we used cattle panels here and left the ceilings open. We put insulation on the roof, and the air conditioning just dumped it in, concrete floors, and we left these spaces open where the collaboration and the really magic, the secret sauce really happens, is that people can see each other, and they're always collaboration. There's artists there. There's advertising people there. There's architects there. There's attorneys. There's pottery makers. There's candlestick makers. There's an event space. There's manufacturers in the lower level is mostly industrial. And so there's woodworking shops and there's metalworking shops. It is an entire city. And then there's a brewery on one end with a tasting room, or that's just been one of our anchor tenants. And then what I always like to do, one of the guys that's in one of the manufacturing spaces, he was an artist and he couldn't make any money as an artist. So he started picking up trash on the side of the road and making furniture out of it. And this is my partner, Gary Buckner here of Stash Design. He's a partner in the building, but he's a tenant in the building also. I love having tenants as partners because they're going to be there probably forever. And this is what they say about us at Tyler Station. All across the country, they talk to people that had ended up here, and they called it a magical co-op building. And it does have co-working in the building, and it actually has co-working that actually makes money. And the reason the co-working makes money is because one of the other partners I have is a tenant with their advertising company in the co-working space. And so they run the co-working space with them. And that's why it's so successful. A co-working doesn't do good as a real estate deal. is an investor real estate deal. It does really good if your business is there and you want to have extra things going on around you. And so,
So basically we went from farming as one of our pillars, where we're farming the neighborhood, farming the entrepreneurs, working within our communities, and now we're shifting into some strategies around form. So this is going to be adaptive reuse, infill, preservation, all kinds of things to make the form better in your communities. Next, so I'd like to start with actually a story of lady developers in South Bend. They've become friends of mine. Next, I'm gonna talk about 3 stories. The first one is Penny Hill. The thing is, what we're gonna get to at the end, which is how to build your ecosystem, right? The ecosystem is the key piece. And as a woman in development, I will tell you, I need to feel supported. I need the support for it to feel like I'm doing the right thing, and I need to feel support. And our work in South Bend for the last 5 years has been that support network. And what we've seen is these women just pulling up and out of the woodwork, ready to go, doing real estate development because they're ambitious and they have that support. So Penny Hill started with the houses. Then they went to some cool complex, like larger small buildings. And then just last year, they bought a whole block in downtown South Bend, an entire block, an old Sears building. And we were able to show up, take a look at it. We gave them some thoughts and wisdom and advice. Now it's rented to artists. There's a whole collaboration on the 2nd and 3rd floor of some of the buildings, and the storefronts are rented, and they're aiming at the space you see on the upper right here. That's their next effort. Next. And then I want to talk about Charity. So Charity, we met her at the happy hour we were doing in South Bend. She was a hardwood floor restoration woman. She ran her own business restoring hardwood floors. She had a little girl power tattoo on her arm. And when I met her, I said, oh my gosh, you have to buy buildings. Like, you know how to renovate, like, hello. And here she goes. Okay, let's go. They came to Buffalo to see my work. They go back. Charity all of a sudden, like almost overnight, buys 7 units and then buys this building, the Monarch. The Monarch is a beautiful building. It's going to be a female brewing company called Brew Hers. And Charity's and her partners and her world, they're just kicking butt. Next. And then the third one is Barbara Turner, who CNU actually flew down for the Strong Towns gathering. I told Barbara she's famous because she got flown down to this conference, but that's a big deal. And it's true. Barbara, we wonder why we're not getting good renovation, not getting good development. Well, you got to find the Barbaras of the world. Barbara retired and decided to use her retirement time and money to renovate buildings in South Bend. And her and Charity and the Penny Hill gang, they're like just going bananas in South Bend, doing their thing, doing these small but gentle and important projects. And that is really important. Of course, you can't do all this without a support network. You can't do this without farming, right? Building your neighborhood and understanding, your place in this world. Next.
Yeah, and I would like to add this on for the women developers, for you guys out there. Women nurture and men conquer. Women seem to do really good at this, getting into this development, because they follow instructions. As guys, we'll ask questions about where to get gas, or whatever in the old days. But, women will, we won't ask where to get gas. Women will, and women nurture. And that's what Barbara's done in her neighborhood for many years. And Bernice has done the same. So we're looking at another strip center. Oh, go ahead, Bernice.
No, I was going to say, and it's we all play our roles. I always love when Monty says that, but it's really great to see these like women feel empowered, and we see it almost every place we go, don't we, Monty?
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah. And so here's another strip center. Again, this is the downtown of Duncanville, and this is their main street. And this is what it looked like. And I bought this a year ago, a little over a year ago, and I bought it for one reason, because this road connected the neighborhood through the parking lot. But I had to figure out, it's perfect timing because Strong Towns has all the parking lot stuff, in the news lately. What are we going to do with this? And so partnering with the Duncanville Community and Economic Development Corporation and the city of Duncanville, we come up with this concept of putting apartments in the parking lot. And look at this, how we created a block and then an entry into the neighborhood. And so this project is happening as we speak right now. And so one day, this is what's going to be there in the middle of the parking lot, about another 50 units of apartments done with balconies and done right in the middle of a shopping center parking lot. And this will get a little bit of metal work and a little bit of artwork on the strip center. As you can see, this is the progress that's happening right now. It's already looking better, and it's leasing, and it's attracting better tenants and better businesses. And this is some of the simplicity of what we do in there. We strip it down, polish the floors, put new air conditioning in, and all of a sudden you got something really more relevant in the modern times. And then in these shopping centers in the back, they're dark in the back. And so this is the back of a new space, we call it collab. It's co-working, collaborative co-working. And you can see we just cut holes to get light in the back end. And one of the things that we do to make all these spaces work all the time is this is an 18,000 square foot space. And as you can see, we're dividing this up into like several little small restaurant spaces and one event type space. By dividing these spaces up, we can get the high rate per square foot. Okay. You got to spend a little more on finish out, but we can get the high rate per square foot, which makes our value of our property go way up. And so,
yeah, and you know, we're gonna, as Monty just said, it's like Monty just showed you another strip plaza, right? Everyone in Strong Towns is saying, what do we do with these strip centers? And Monty's really been leading the way with kind of creatively thinking. And it's never perfect. They're never going to be perfect, but they have to get better, right? So now we get to transition a little bit, still in the world of form, but we're going to talk about preservation. If you're sitting bundled up, I don't know, it's cold in Buffalo, so I talk about bundling up a lot, but next, Monty, if you're sitting around and you're wondering, you're saying, I have a lot of, everyone has like a vacant property in their downtown, whether it's a tiny downtown or a village or like a big city. And one of the strategies that I think is often missed is stabilization and receivership. Now, this is something I do. I actually, I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called Preservation Buffalo Niagara. We oversee a $5 million stabilization program dedicated to commercial buildings, historic commercial buildings. Next slide. So these are some of the commercial buildings that we're helping. And you might say, well, what does that have to do with you know, small scale development? It has everything to do with it, because sometimes we don't have plans for our historic buildings, but if you can come in and stabilize them, give them a new roof, put masonry, fix the masonry, fix the chimneys, you're extending their life for when there is a plan. And so our $5 million stabilization program, we give up to $150,000 for each commercial property, which is a huge deal. We're doing like 10 of them at a time. It's bananas over here in Buffalo. Please come visit. Everyone's welcome. But then the second thing, if you're thinking about strategies for vacant properties that you may have in your neighborhood, I want to make sure I highlighted this. We're also a certified receiver, meaning we can actually take properties from slumlords who aren't investing in them. If they're in housing court, if they're not responding, if they're not paying their taxes, we actually can be a receiver of that property, put it back out to market, and then take the money and hold it for that owner if they ever take it. You know, that's what we have to do. But receivership is a really cool strategy when you're thinking about, you know, working in your place and making your place a little bit better. Next, Monty. I get to tell you a little bit about the Texas Theater. This was Monty's restoration project, because since preservation is the theme at the moment. Next. So let's get this right. It's when Oswald was allegedly shot John F. Kennedy. He was found at the Texas Theater, right, Monty? Yeah. Allegedly is the key.
Oswald,
is the key.
Yeah, Oswald was captured at the Texas Theater after he allegedly shot President Kennedy.
Yeah. Yeah. So Monty decides that this has to be restored, of course. They work with a nonprofit. So this is another strategy, nonprofits, right? You use a nonprofit, renovate the building, and they sold it to a for-profit owner at a very affordable price. And that's the reason why this Texas Theater is still standing. Go.
And it's one of the only single screen movie theaters in the country that is for profit, that makes money. Now today it's got 2 screens. Yeah.
2 screens. That's great. Another strategy we want to talk about is the Lafayette Building in South Bend. So the Lafayette Building in South Bend, this is a beautiful building. So many cities and towns have places like this where they don't know what to do with it. It's vacant and it gets struck to the city, like they're abandoned. And so a lot of places opt to demo. They're like demolish. But the city of South Bend was leading the way. They put $750,000 towards the roof, and they put this out for RFP out to the community. And they're right now in the process of selling it to two women who are going to kick butt, take names, and restore this. That they're selling that for $10,000. So if you're out there and maybe you're working at a city level, an RFP process is a really great strategy to inspire and get properties off your hands, right? And Monty, I want you to chime in with the layout that's on the next slide. You can explain that a little bit.
You know, these older office buildings got a small floor plate, like this is like a 5,000 square foot floor plate with an atrium in the middle. And as you can see, the little suites around it, they were small offices of 100 years ago. So we've just taken those suites and turned them into small micro units from anywhere from 250 square feet up to 500, 500 square feet. So we can get $2 to $2.50 a square foot, which makes the numbers work with less subsidy. So we're looking at doing this without as much subsidy or tax credits. We're looking at, we don't want to have all the brain damage of doing this. And by downsizing these, they can stay that way. Now, as South Bend becomes very popular in the future, it'll never gentrify because they're small unless you start making them big. And so these spaces can always stay work, for the working class affordability. They can be your wait staff, your single teachers or hospital workers, things like that. So it really has a longevity. We really thought about the longevity when we laid this out and began to conceptualize it.
Yeah. And, I wanted also to say, it's okay to be like progressive and lead the way, right? Lead the way with this. And South Bend really is. In fact, Willow's here in the comments, Monty. She said, hi. Willow's the downtown director. She's the one trying to oversee to make sure this is saved, So it takes a village. What did you say? It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a whole community to save a building. This is a great example of that.
Sure.
Next. So we get this all the time. Everyone talks about land trusts. Should we do a community land trust? What do you think about community land trusts? And then and what I love to say is that community land trusts are great and they can do really great things. And we are working with a community land trust in Kansas City on a very old historic school. And I wonder how many people have old historic schools sitting in their communities, right? They're sitting there, you don't know what to do with them. You know that you want them to be an asset and you don't want to tear them down because we want to save these things. And so what the Community Land Trust did was basically got a team together and they said, we're going to save this building. And they brought Monty, they brought me in, we walked the halls, we got the engineers and the architects and everybody together. And we essentially created a plan to make it similar to what you've seen with Tyler Station and everything else, a collaboration village, right? Breaking up space, making it work financially, so that way you're not heavy on subsidies or super high leveraging. So you're, because then you're less sustainable as an organization. So the land trust is going to be moving into this. They're already working on it. They're just got the roof in, they're getting heat in, they're going to be in the back, and then they're going to be renting spaces out all around. There's going to be a gym like with boxing and like yoga, in the old gym. There's going to be restaurants, little micro restaurants, just like DeSoto Marketplace. And we're just going to build it, phase it, and build it over time. And this is a really big deal because they can apply for grants, they can apply for donations, they can get a loan, but they can, because they're a land trust, they have more capacity to ask for more money in a different way, right? And they can lower their expenses, which means they're going to be more sustainable in the long run. And that's such a good example. If you're out there thinking like, well, what could I do, or how do I do this? Well, a land trust is definitely an option. Next. So we're going from preservation to infill in the land of form, right? Everybody says, well, why do I get crappy infill in my neighborhood? A lot of people hate development because they see it and they're worried, they're scared. And there are tons of strategies out there for development. But again, when the locals own the projects, right, the locals have to look you in the eye when they go get the coffee, So if they do a bad development, they'll hear from it. So that's what's so good about being local. You're sort of held to a different standard. And I I find that, you just get better results when you have local ownership, which is why we're really pushing on this local builder effort. So next, so a lot of people have vacant lots in their communities. So maybe your village, you have like a village setting and you have a couple vacant lots and you're figuring out what to do with it. That might be one. Or you're like Buffalo, Kansas City, South Bend, Detroit, where you have thousands of vacant lots. You don't know what to do with it. Pre-approved plans are all the rage right now. And the pre-approved plan efforts are really fun. Next slide. We worked, and by we, it was not me, it was Jim Kuman and some badass ladies that worked with Jim on creating the South Bend pre-approved plans. And if you don't know the pre-approved plan concept, you probably do because you're hanging out in this land of strong towns, right? But pre-approved plans, they cut money off of projects. When you're in a community like South Bend or Buffalo, and we can barely support new construction because our value is just not there, our community doesn't have a ton of money. The pre-approved plans, they give you a path, they give you an idea, and they save money. They save money. So if you have like lots that you want to see filled in and you're asking yourself, why is this not happening? Well, you can look to South Bend. South Bend is a leader in this. They created these great plans, stacked duplex, single house, carriage house, small apartment. You walk in, you walk out with a stamped like, okay, and now you're able to move forward. Next. Here's an example, which is Tom, he's part of the South Bend local developer ecosystem. He just was determined to do this, and this is what he's working on right now. It's happening in real life.
Yeah.
In real life, huh, Monty?
Yep,
And
all
of this, we didn't check. We're getting to the zoning part, but none of this would have happened without the zoning code change, right? None of this would have happened if South Bend wasn't like a leader in trying to really willing to say what can we do, right? Desperation in a way. It's like, well, let's do good things. Next.
And the other thing is we're not interested in, the thing that we think about at Neighborhood Evolution all the time is we got to build something. We can't just wait around for another plan. So we're always really excited, even when we have that one little duplex is a big deal right now. And there's been others that are working alone.
Yeah. And, well, last time we were in South Bend, we looked at a duplex that was for sale for $34,000, right? So, to see infill when the appraisals are a lot lower, that's a big deal. And so next we're going to chat a little bit about 12plex, a 12plex that Jim Kuman did in Minneapolis. So Minneapolis is a hot market, much different than Buffalo and some of South Bend. But this project I think is so worthy of talking about. Jim like put his money where his mouth is, right? He said, well, I can't do this for a living and not do a very good project, right? And so he teamed up with Marcus, who owns Fabric Design out of Detroit. Marcus is a great friend. He's a developer. He's been part of the Incremental Development Alliance and for years, and Marcus is amazing. And the two of them just make a great team. And they created this wonderful 12plex that is hyper eco-friendly. There's solar panels, there's hyper insulation, there's all kinds of mechanicals. So we would need a whole hour, conversation on this. But the key is that Jim moved in here with his family. He did this for himself and his family, right? And it's beautiful. It's just done now. He just nailed it. He got it right. He got it right. And I just love absolutely what he did here. And it's worth saying. And you can, if you're saying, oh, we want more housing in our community. Well, here's a great 12plex, right? Here's a great example of how you can make that work. Everyone wants affordable housing. Everybody wants more density, right? They need to support the local businesses. This is how you get it done. Next.
Okay. So how many out there have got golf courses going bad in your community? That's happening. That's happening around the country, and it's got to happen a whole lot more. And we've been lucky enough, Bernice and Jim and I, to work on a golf course in Grandview in Missouri. And so there's the golf course here. Look at this golf course. This all the green is the golf course, and then you can see all the the driving ranges and the tee boxes and all that. I mean, what do you do with all that land when the golf goes away? It just, the grass grows and then it becomes really bad. And so here's the clubhouse. You can see here, the green is existing and the red is what's proposed. And so all these people live out here, and they're just really upset, and the city's having to mow the land, and we've got to figure out what to do with it. And so here's the plan for fixing a golf course. So first of all, we're going to create a little 3-hole golf course. And we're going to also create an Airbnb and a real town center right here. And so you can see the new lots that we're putting in and where we're putting them. And then the rest of it, we're going to actually let it go back to being a nature trail. We're going to let it go back to being the forest. We may have some farming going out there. We may have some horses. You know, there may be other things, but in the beginning, this is what we're going to do. So this is the existing clubhouse. These are existing homes. And this is the parking lot next to the clubhouse. These are all new. Little bitty 600 and 1,200 square foot retail buildings for sale. And then little cottage homes and then townhomes. And then one day, like a overpowered Airbnb, maybe 20 units, and then these little chalets around the course. But the point is, we'll start right here and create a main street and create a sense of place in the middle of a golf course. And so these are interesting, and I think that we're going to see a lot more of this. We're not going to go through all these numbers here, but it represents about $20,000 worth of work and planning right here, what you see. Getting you all these numbers and getting a plan that's actually ready to go to the city for zoning and to meet with the homeowners association, people that will have to approve this.
Hey, Monty, if
Yeah.
you don't mind, I think one thing that important to add there is that Monty and Jim work with an engineer, and in real time, they were like, can we do this 600 square foot space? How much will it be cost to build?
Yeah.
How much could they rent it for? And they actually ran the numbers as it goes. And that's really important. I'm not trying to it's just, no one does that, right? Nobody really does that. Your architect will design and then they give you something, and then you have to go back to a builder, and then the builder tells you you can't do that. And it's this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And what Monty and Jim in particular, the two of them did, and it's fun to witness it and see it, because it's like, it's just wild, but they're able to run those numbers and crunch them quickly to give you a plan that works. And this is really
see if you're in the ballpark.
Yeah,
and
see if you're in the ballpark. Yeah.
a lot of this property was in the floodplain too, so it was really not usable and couldn't be built on. And you can't afford the infrastructure anyway these days. We got too much infrastructure, so we use the existing infrastructure without adding very much. So in South Bend, this is something in 1963. Studebaker leaves. This is what it is today, and we got some South Bend people here, and Mike Keene is here with us today also. In South Bend, the city owned by locals. In South Bend, it says in the purple area, South Bend, Indiana, unique development model is putting ownership into the hands of hundreds of local residents and giving big developers a run for their money. And we're going to have the proof is in the pudding in just a minute. We're going to see it. Here's Mike Keene's famous chair. And then Mike Keene was the accidental developer. He lived in this neighborhood and he adopted, this was his farm. It's a little bitty farm, and he just started helping Habitat build homes in the neighborhood just to make the neighborhood better. And that's how he got into this business. And there's some of his little properties is he took them from this to this. And then he also began to infill in these properties when the zoning became proper. And so he built 2 tiny homes, 2 600 square foot units. He sold the first one to an influencer, a young influencer who became his partner in a bigger project we'll see in a minute. And the other one's an Airbnb. And that's how they made the numbers work, because these little 600 square foot buildings cost like $300 a square foot to build. They're really nearly unaffordable. But the way he did it, he was able to make the numbers work. And then today, this is across the street, Mike's taken on a 50,000 square foot bakery. Some of the same sort of principles we've been talking about earlier. He's building this out incrementally. And so it's under construction as we speak. It was sat empty for many, many years, and it tried with several different developers doing tax credit apartments. They had failed and failed and failed, and finally it's coming to pass. And here it is, dividing the spaces back up. Here's the co-lab. This is co-working space where Mike will be officing and holding his events. And it's going to be a great place. And so here's Mike's farm. Let's see how it performs. So here's this little farm. And it said from the year 2016 till the year 2031, here's what the taxes are doing in Mike's little farm right here on that property. See, just
Incredible.
done one at a time, and it would have never gotten done if it hadn't have been locals doing this. It would have never happened. And so
Yeah.
Bernice
I,
got her
yeah.
affordable duplexes.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting. We got a question. How do we start from somebody in Buffalo, by the way. We will connect. How do you start? This is a really good example of how you start. So finding a little duplex is really where you can start. It's where you can do first time home buyer. It's where you can do a residential mortgage for 10 to 20% down, 5-10% down, depends on the financing. This is where you can actually make money. And I want to talk a little bit about this renovation process. I knew I could get $800 a month for each apartment. The average rent is $1,100 in Niagara Falls. I bought this duplex for $10,000 from the city. We renovated it with a lot of love. My mortgage is like $720 a month. We're able to keep the rents $300 below market, and we're still able to bank a little bit of money. Okay, it's a win-win-win. Next, so here's what it looks like. Brown is having a moment now, but it wasn't back like a few years ago. But you can see it was very brown. There's a lot of hardwood floor. The historic cabinets look great. Next. We saved what we could, restored the windows, right? Everything to keep the cost down. We're not buying materials. I'm not pulling the drywall down. I'm not doing anything. We're just painting and working within what we can, restoring all the windows and keeping everything. That's how you keep it affordable. Next. I unleashed my doorknob collection for those who don't know me. And here's a little hint. If you want to get into development, if you see doors at the side of the road, pull the doorknobs off and put them in a little bin. This went in the entire building, which saved me $2,000 worth of hardware. Next. And we make it cute and keep it simple, right? Keep the cabinets, keep the popcorn ceiling. I don't like a popcorn ceiling, but it looks good. It's good enough, right? Where it's super cute. It's an $800 a month 2-bedroom apartment. No one's complaining about a little cute gold popcorn ceiling. We're keeping it easy, keeping it simple. Next. And then whenever you do a project, here's my little piece of advice: throw a party and invite the mayor. Was the former mayor hanging out with us. Of course, we had pizza to hang out, and we leased the apartments right away because people came in and hung out with us and they wanted the apartment. Next. The next project I want to talk about is a little pie shop that could. Everyone knows this project. A lot of people know this for me if they hear me talking. I had a tenant who came up to me and said that they wanted to start a pie shop. She had never done a pie shop, but she had her grandma's recipe, right? So I said, give me some pies. I'll try the pies. I ate the pie. It was super delicious. I threw her in the car. I said, let's go look at this building, right? And this has 2 apartments. And if the zoning code had not changed in 2017, this storefront was illegal. It was vacant. It was shuttered. And the zoning code allowed it to be reactivated because of this great little paragraph that we worked really hard to put in there. But she was able to go in at $600. I'm sorry, $525 a month for the first year, $575 and $600 a month. Why? Because we did a renovation to perm loan. We got really creative with our financing. I renovated on a dime, right? We work with what you have. I didn't pull all that siding off. Like I could have restored the clapboard. I could have gone and spent $300,000. I didn't. I had $60,000. I had to make it work. We made it work. The mortgage is paid. You know, she's like really good. She was really good to go. And she did her work for 3 years. 3 years she was a pie shop. And she just moved out, and we just sold this to a first-time home buyer who's going to rent the upper apartment and the storefront and have $0 mortgage. Zero. They will pay nothing to live in their great little apartment. And that is how, it's hard to even describe. It's like a win-win-win, the most creative you can make it, but it's worth doing. Next.
All right. So we're going to look at this is again how to start. This was a solution to some homeless housing. I talked to some people in an area called Bonton Farms, and they said we got people coming out of shelters and they need a room. They need a house and they need a room, independent rooms, because in the lower income in the homeless area, if they live in spaces together, there's a lot of trouble. And so this is a 2-bedroom house here. You see, this is my drawing. You can see why I'm not an architect. And this was back in 2017. And this is a single family lot. And while all we did was add 2 rooms onto the back with doors connecting them. And these doors connecting them made it where it was not multifamily. It's roommates. So you got 2 roommates here. And let's see how the numbers work. Back then, this is in 2017, we could spend $143,000, and at 2% interest, we had a payments of $927 a month. And so I found out that the homeless people coming out of shelters were living in hotels for $100 a week, and then living on the street a week, and living in $100, hotel again. And they were living in flea infested, people steal their stuff. So they could afford $250 a month. So this became an owner occupied homeless housing solution. So the guy that owns this has been sober and in a house for 5 years. He now owns it, and he's now renting to these two people coming out of shelter for $250 each. His payments are $427 a month. The key to affordability is ownership. Okay, now you can't take a guy who's never owned anything and throw him into being a landlord. He has to have continued, community coaching. And so this is what it looks like today. Look at these 2 bedrooms, and here's your living room and your kitchen, and here's the hacked on rooms. See, it's 2 ADUs attached, and there's the doors. And then it doesn't have a kitchen. It just has a really high powered wet bar. So that makes it a 4-bedroom house with 3 baths. And so these have their own entries. So people can live here, live separately. This person can mentor these 2, and the community mentors this person. And this is what it looks like today. So you're not going to change anybody's life if you put them in bad real estate. So this thing is nice today because we could spend more because it's owner occupied with low interest in the 2 roommate units. So here's the hack. Here they are. Here they're hacked on. Here's their backyards. It looks good. It's just added on to the pitch of the roof. Very simple but elegant. So this is the opposite end. This is the luxury version. This is a suburban household on a cul-de-sac, and this is a 3,000 square foot on an acre with a pool. That's why we call it a luxury version. This is what it looks like. This is in Texas. It's not very, very nice. It had no architectural style when it was built in the 70s. And this is, just trashed out. And and so we went to figure out how to split this house up. Where we could do the same thing again, a single family house. You can do roommates. You can do up to 4 people that live with you that are not related. This is a quick performa. We're not going to go through that, but here's the quick performa. We do the plan and the performa before we really even get into to hiring an architect. And so here's the house the way it is. Here's the main part of the house and the game room, and here's the master bedroom, and here's the 2 kids' room with a Jack and Jill bathroom. And so we split it up into 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, 4, and added a pool house, an ADU outside. And then we have these doors. See these doors? These are lockable doors. See, they're lockable. And these have just mini kitchens in them. They're not stoves. So everybody can live separately. They have their entries. See, they have their own entry. Here, entry here. So it can be multi-generational housing or roommate housing for the modern day dysfunctional family that's the empty nester, aging in place kind of suburban fix. And so here's a little bit bigger. There's the as-built drawing when we started. There's the drawing today. You see the locking doors. There's your entries. There's the locking door. They all got separate thermostat. They got separate air control. And so here's the progress. Here's what it looks like tonight. I'm going to go home to this tonight. I live in one of these units. I'm experimenting with it. Here's the pool in the pool house. And here's what the front's going to look like. I didn't have a good enough front photo to show you. And here's the numbers. So this is what's crazy. If we would have just rebuilt this and put a little lipstick on the pig that it was, we would have been in it for $650,000 or $700,000, which is the highest comp in Duncanville. But we got $1,150,000 in it. We're completely upside down, except for the fact that if you have an elderly parent that's going into assisted living, okay, or you've got family members or other people that you can put in there with you. The short of the story is 0 rent and $7,800 a year in cash flow. The key to affordability is spending more and owner occupants. So, and Bernice is going to talk about a little bit of zoning, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Absolutely. And I want to emphasize the key was spending more there versus at my 585, like mural building, right? The key was incremental to keep it affordable. But there are tactics and strategies that you can do at home to do this. So, so I get to chat about zoning. I served on the zoning board for 8 years, and I have a planning degree. I guess that makes me an expert. But we get to talk a little bit about zoning. So typically people will want to buy a project or a property and they will want to change the zoning. They'll say, oh, this doesn't work. We got to change the zoning code. If you were asking me, I would tell you probably don't do it. But if you're someone like Monty and Jim, they have rewritten their zoning codes via a plan, a PUD, basically specific to the site. That's something that Monty and Jim do a lot. It's something I don't do, but it is something that can be done in these projects. And that's how you see DeSoto Marketplace getting what they want and Tyler Station getting more. And, all of these projects come down to zoning and asking for more density, more housing, more trailers, more, et cetera. That's how we make the Strodes and the strip plazas and stuff like that, go away over time. Next. So, but if you want to be bold, if you're a community and you haven't updated your zoning code, the city of South Bend, again, I'm sorry, I feel like we talk about South Bend all the time, but they are truly leading the way in so many different ways. They received, a major award because they removed minimum parking requirements. They made a very democratic, how I feel, a very democratic zoning code, like a zoning code that can be read by average people, not with shalls and thous and all these things you can't understand. And they really did a good zoning code a few years back. And if you have a city that hasn't done it, I would highly recommend it. In Buffalo, we started our zoning reform in 2011. It was 6 years, 242 public meetings. I had to make buttons that say like heart, heart, heart the green code to get them to pass. But Buffalo actually was one of the first major cities to remove minimum parking requirements citywide. We threw our whole code out and we started all over with a form-based code, because basically our entire city was illegal, our entire city. And just like the little pie shop, completely illegal. The storefront was illegal. There was no parking, so that was illegal. It was built to the street, so that's illegal. So there are so many reasons that our zoning codes kill our communities, our old zoning codes. They just destroy. So if you are sitting on an old zoning code, please, think about pushing, get on your zoning board, get on your, on a planning board. And push forward. And it's really good. Definitely read the Buffalo Code if you can. Go ahead. Monty, should I say anything else about zoning, or are you done? I usually don't like to use zoning more than like 3 or 4 times.
Zoning. I mean, gosh, I mean, that's part of your work in your community is to get involved in your city and help those zoning codes, help those policymakers make better decisions on the zoning. And so we're gonna finish up here with the 12 steps to town making. And this is something we give you for free. You can have this. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to do anything with us, or we have it. It's on our website at neighborhoodevolution.com. And it's basically how to have meetings, your local meetings, and to fix this stuff yourself and to collaborate with each other. The picture on the right is one of the famous pictures that we go back to all the time, where the secret sauce is. It was these living room meetings, and these were in Mike Keene's his house, and where he'd bring 7 or 8 people together just to talk about the issues of a city. So many things, I can't go into it tonight, but so many great things happen from these little neighborhood meetings. I still enjoy them when I get to go back up and have one. And over to the left is a 12-step meeting, and it's basically a group of people, community people that care about their town makers, that come together once a month, and they go through the 12 steps here. In each meeting, it's a support group. There's no leader, there's no money to join, and you start off with step number 1, which is finding your farm. Step number 2 is getting to know your neighbors. Step number 3, you got to find the money. Step 4, this is a legal business. You've got to have attorneys and accountants. Step 5, you need to find a project experiment that's small, that doesn't take zoning change in the beginning. Step 6 is you want to clean your projects out. You want to clean your life out. You want to clean your finances. You want to clean your car. If you have an old building, clean it out, strip it down, take a look at it before you finish planning. Step 7 is building your team, creating your crew. You got to make sure that your consultants and your people around you understand what you're doing and that they're in the same camp with you. They got to understand, you don't want to hire an architect who's doing hospitals. You want to hire an architect who's been doing duplexes or doing this kind of work. Step 8 is deciding what's best for your project with all your people together at the table. This is one of the biggest mistakes people make in planning. They don't bring all their people together to hear from each other. Step 9 is learning how to set up your construction management system. Step 10 is about leasing, time to move in. If you don't have a tenant, move in yourself, rent to yourself, move into your projects. I'm moving into my project now and I'm moving into a new office. It's new projects. I put myself in them first. Bernice has done the same. Mike is doing the same. Jim has also done it too. And then 11 is learn how to manage your property. It's probably the most unappreciated part of this business, property management. And step 12 is helping others. And that's not just helping other small developers, but that's helping your city, getting involved in your zoning, starting a street market, planning a community garden. That's part of the step 12. And then here's the proof is in the pudding. This is what happens when we coach. We come to town. When we do a lot of independent coaching. This couple right here, this son and mother here had a duplex. We come in, we look at the situation, what they got. We have a discussion, and then we give them a recommendation. It's a prescription of what they do. This happens in an hour and a half right here. This happens in an hour and a half. Now that's just the beginning. And the results of that today, I want to show you in South Bend. This is the power of small. These are real projects in real time that are happening right now in our South Bend farm. The same thing is happening in Lafayette, Louisiana, in Kansas City, Missouri, in Southern Dallas County. And you can see these sizes of these projects, 750, 350, 450, 608. There's some that are $1.5 million, 3, 5. This is $30 million in real estate development, which makes this cohort in South Bend the largest developer in the city. And this equates to about $602,000 in taxes per year. So this is real stuff. This is not child's play. This is not the nice little guys down the street doing cute little development. This is serious business. And if we all want to go to the moon in every city, I mean, we want the best for our city, right? So you don't start building the rocket ship when you're still on the bottom of the ocean. You got to figure out how to get your mask and get your flippers. You got to learn how to swim. And you take those 12 steps, and before you know it, you'll be at the moon. Thank you all for listening to us tonight. And now I think we'll take some questions, right, Tony?
Yeah, Monty and Bernice, I am super excited. Every time I hear you guys speak, there's more and more to those stories.
Oh, Edward, hey.
that I learn from, and I really want to thank you for sharing that with this group tonight. I want to take the opportunity, if folks have questions, we have a couple of different ways you can do it. You can actually, there's a question and answer button at the bottom of the screen. Please feel free to enter some questions there and we can answer them, or in the comments. I saw there's a pretty healthy discussion going on in the comments. So anybody that would have questions, if not, I will start to interrogate the two of you. If there Oh, yeah. So one of the questions that came in, which I hear a lot when we're out with our community action labs, is how does a new developer get skin in the game when a bigger, well-known developers or not-for-profits scoop up all the vacant lots quicker than you can?
Yeah, and it's funny because this person is in Buffalo. And just for the record, if you want to just like get a coffee on the side, I'm 100% game. I would say if I was starting out today, I would focus on a residential mortgage. I would focus on 2, 3, or 4 unit property. And that's where you start. You know, we talk about a lot of projects, but the reality is I started with the one house I live in right now. and then I bought a double, and then I bought a triple, and I started renovating and working within that, you know, and I did it differently because of investment and all this other things. But right now, the residential mortgages, Fannie Mae mortgages are like 3, 5, 8% down, and you could buy in Buffalo, at least there's still doubles that you can buy for pretty affordable. You could buy that, move in, and rent the other one out, and you'll be mortgage light or you know, free, maybe, probably, you know, even, and then you start saving money for the next one. It always takes a while to start up. You know, when you're really from the beginning to like year 1 to year 3 is slow. But then once it starts moving, it starts really moving, right? And maybe you can make it a little bit quicker, but it always just takes a while to start up, and you have to have a lot more patience than you think you need. But that is the truth. No matter if you're in South Bend or Medicine Hat or wherever you're at, you know, it's like starting small is the key. And sometimes you think you're small, but you almost need to get smaller.
Yeah. So many people make the mistake of trying to start too large. What you want to, you're always looking for Edward, you're always looking for the opportunities. You got to drive the streets. You got to look on MLS and look on LoopNet. You got to outmaneuver these big groups and people that are buying. You got to get to know those groups and see if they want to sell some of their properties. You got to call on properties that are abandoned and vacant. You have to watch people that, you know, people that have died. You have to watch, you know, when that happens, properties are liquidated. We're going into a time right now where the market's got to be more of a buyer's market than a seller's market. It's going to be a good time to get into the business.
Yeah, it's already happening for sure.
And when we talk about farming, and as you describe farming the community, what I have found in my neighborhoods is that if you're in the neighborhood living, you get to know who owns the properties. You get to know those individuals, and sometimes they would prefer to work with somebody they know to liquidate a property than to go out to some big real estate agent, broker, or somebody from out of town.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Step number two, getting to know your neighbors. That's not just going to get to know your neighbors on your street. That's getting to know who the investors are and the bankers are. And the people know if you do a good job. There's people that call me sometimes and say, I want you to have this property. We know we could get more for it, but we want you to have it because we know what you will do. And they're elderly, you know, they're passing on. And the only thing you take with you from this life is what you leave behind. And so people that actually are starting to think about that, and these baby boomers that are graduating, you know, are wanting to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
So there's a question out of Medicine Hat. I was just up there, it seems like a few hours ago. But one of the questions that's coming out of there is there a difference in approach in a higher value market? So a lot of the examples you shared today were kind of in the lower range in some of the areas you're working. In places like Medicine Hat, their floor of entry seems to be in the 200,000 to 300,000 range.
Take it away, Monty. You got this.
You got, you know, in a place, Jim Cummins, you know, the Sundial project there, you know, was on land that cost $50 a square foot. You know, when you're in a really affluent area and you're in the middle of it, you're going to have to probably go a little bit dense. And fortunately, where he was at, they had no parking requirements. So he could build 100% on the lot, a very walkable neighborhood, you know, very bikeable neighborhood, one of the most bikeable cities. And you have to have more money yet, or you have to go out further. You go, here's the hot ring. You go out to the second ring, you go out to the third ring. Where is the property, the worst looking property that's closest to the hot properties? Where is it? And it could be an old strip center, an old gas station. It could be something else where you got to use your creativity, where everybody else is seeing it as a strip center and you're seeing it as a mixed use development. So you have to begin, you see an old warehouse as a collaboration village rather than just a warehouse to store, you know, or do manufacturing. We have to be able to see things different. I mean, this is how big your office is these days. It's this big. They used to be big, right? With credenzas and all that. You have to start to see things different and to figure out what you're going to do with them. And that you have to be smarter and quicker. And that's what we are. We're more nimble as small scale incremental developers.
That's great. Out of Chisholm, which is again one of our community action labs up on the Iron Range of Minnesota, comes a question. how do you start getting your city to change or loosen their zoning policies? Did you say something about the script or proposal that you used that you would present to the city? I want to kind of add to that because I think, Monty, one of the things you described was some of the desperation being on your side.
Yeah.
And how some of that's leveraged.
Well, Bernice is probably better qualified, but the desperation part, when people are desperate, when cities are desperate for development, they will do things they normally wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I always do is begin with neighborhood meetings, community leader meetings with a blank piece of paper and begin to sketch on it with them. And then if you can get enough neighbors and enough homeowners together and stuff, then the city's got to see that they're going to do it. The city council's going to do what the neighbors want to do, right, Bernice?
Yeah.
Bernice went to 242 meetings.
Yeah.
And,
Yes, I did. I had to make buttons for it. So Buffalo is a city of 280,000 people. Okay. We grew in the last census for the first time in 60 years. I have to say that. But we came in out of desperation, but it was the small developers and the development community that was saying to the mayor, like, this is impossible. It's too expensive to build parking. Like, we can't afford this. And then there was the affordable housing world and nonprofit world was also saying, like, we want more transit, we want more affordable housing. So when we passed our code, it was unanimous. It was it was an easy pass because everyone sort of said, it was like, no matter what world you were from politically, it didn't matter. There was an argument that was saying, pass the code, like, get this passed and do it. And I would say, like, the code is not perfect, but it certainly has been incredibly important for our community. Every single project I've done in the last 8 years, or since 2017, they were illegal. They needed variances until this code, and now we can just get them done. No parking, they're very transit friendly, and they save thousands of dollars because of the parking. So sometimes you have to make buttons. You have to put the pressure. You got to get a community group together. We had like a zoning, like, pros, like, change the zoning code group that we made on Facebook. That's all it really took. And then actually the key thing was, we said to the mayor, what do you want your legacy to be? Right. So for him, this was a legacy project, right? This is a legacy. And when you say that to people that are in power, it's like everything, right? So that's like another key thing.
Another thing is, you got to say, we want to start with the end in mind.
Yes.
Picture a beautiful city. What do we see? And it's more about that picture of that beauty than it is about the uses. So the uses, the market's going to take care of the uses. So many cities try to focus on the uses, and it doesn't work because you can't predict, you can't zone something away and expect the market to follow. I mean, you have to really kind of follow the market, and you have to it's more about the form and the architecture. Now, there's obviously some uses you don't want: a pig slaughtering farm on Main Street, or you may not want a bunch of smoke shops in your city, or that's the biggest thing these days, keeping out the smoke shops, or the things like that are not good, the lower, that some of them. But that's the real thing, is like, let's make the city look good, and we'll be attractive, and we don't have to worry about dealing with the uses so much.
Yeah. By the way, to make everybody laugh, this is what I have left of my green. I had to make, this is like 100 green code buttons in a bag that I still have in my office from 2017. I had to make like hundreds of buttons and get all the council people to wear these little heart, the green code. So it's not just like the politicians or the developers, it's the community, right? It's caring and putting yourself forward. I attended so many of those meetings because I wanted it to happen. And so anyway, so if you want to change the zoning code, one of the things you could do is, start pushing forward and make buttons.
Yeah.
So
Actually, I think I have some of those buttons.
you do?
I
They belong in like
Buffalo. Yeah, I went to
Yeah.
Buffalo, and it's like, oh, you're somebody that supports this, and it wasn't even Bernice that gave it to me, which was like,
that's a win.
and the person that's asking some of these is out of I won't call her out on this, but she is really the Mike Keene of Chisholm. She's
Oh.
having SOFA
amazing.
meetings up there, and I would definitely identify. We've written about her, so if you look at Chisholm, you can definitely find the information. But she's part of a small group of 4 people that are doing the SOFA conversations, and they are truly accidental developers and
Right.
doing incredible work.
Those are y'all talk about the champions, and so do we. We talk about every city needs, a champion. If there's just one, that's okay. If you don't have a champion, there's just no really hope. If you don't have a champion, we can't do this work for you, and you can't either. This is an inside job.
There's a question out of Canada. So
Ooh.
it's a pretty broad question. So are there any specific advice that you have for Canadians? So that's kind of broad. I know that you all have some relationships up there, and I know Bernice, you slip across the border every once in a while.
I'll tell you, it's so interesting. Because we are on the border, right? And of my 10 people that I work with every day, 2 of them are Canadian that met Buffalo people and moved to Buffalo instead of moving to Canada. And the key reason was because housing was better, more affordable here than Canada. And that is tragic, actually, because you guys get healthcare and we don't. There are some strategies for sure. Your building codes in Canada are better. You can do a lot more flexibility with them. Monty, what do you have on the finance side? Anything?
This, my knowledge is from we've been dealing with some people in Regina, Canada, and then one of our architect planner friends in Detroit works a lot over in Canada, and then of course Grayson Johnson, whoever all strong towns people know Grayson, is Canadian, and I think the affordability problem and the financing problem, and I know Grayson's working on housing solutions for that. It's so, if you don't have a lot of money, it's just finding that spot to go. Again, you may have to leave the big affluent city. You may have to go to the next one over. And this is what I would do. And because my dad was a carpenter, my mom was a telephone operator, so we didn't know we didn't have money. I had to go to the place where they were so ugly, I could afford to buy something. And that's where and Bernice has done the same. Mike too. All 3 of us have done the same. And that's what I would tell a Canadian is go to where you can go and start to build, because they don't really need us where it's all built up. They don't. And I know it's more fun to live there. And I hear that too. But at the end of your life, do you want to just live for fun, or do you want to actually build? Do you actually want to be a part of a change? I would think you want to have the legacy. The legacy is, as I get older, I see more and more important how important it is, and how much fun it is, and how it looks to look back. And with us, we are the doers. We are the ones that are going to these places and doing it. And I can't tell you how special it is. It's just special doing this kind of work. We can always go across town and eat dinner in a really cool place, that we can't afford to live in. We can do that. But I would go out and I don't know the government policies and things like that in Canada. I don't know enough to say, but I know the principles of building an ecosystem are the same everywhere. Begin to pull those people together in your living room. Begin to have a 12-step group. Get involved in your city council. Go to your zoning meetings. Go to the park board meeting. Yep. Get involved, and you will start to see the things that you will start to see the places you can work
and what you need, right? So the thing is, don't underestimate the power of getting together and saying, wait a second, we need down payment mortgage assistance, right? Or we need, South Bend also does a free sewer line program for up to $20,000 because they listened to people, what they said they needed. So when you get people together, you could say housing is too expensive. We are looking to, we need $100,000 down payments to do this. And you start to build your ecosystem and ask, and you can make that ask, right? Mm-hmm. To communities, to people, to investors, right? There are people out there that will do down payments. That is a I have had many projects where I've had $0 personal dollars out of pocket. So it's, you just can't take no for an answer. You just have to You just have to allow yourself to try to, every hurdle, you just have to get over it and over it and over it. You're just becoming a mountain climber at the end of the day. You're like climbing it's a lot, but it is great when money is right. And you can make place, you can be a producer of place, or you can be a consumer of place.
Yeah.
And we are really going to be the producers of place.
Yeah. The other thing, we talk about these days, instead of getting fancy capital stacks, which in Canada you're going to need more equity, and you're going to need, and that's the problem, but we need all these fancy, tricky tax credit deals and capital stacks and all that. And I'm not saying to do that and not criticizing anybody who does that, but we're learning more about community impact investors, which are baby boomers with wealth who need to do something before they graduate. And if you can find people that are interested in your community, and these may have been people that have never invested in real estate, and that that you have to have a personal relationship with them. Where do you get that personal relationship? You get it in step number 2. You get it in those living rooms, and you become attractive yourself, attractive in your thought, attractive in your planning, attractive in your organization. That's how you become attractive to money. And I begged for money too long. It's a lot more fun to attract it, and so we teach people all the time how to be attractive to money. And you for sure need that in Canada. You'll need, plenty of equity.
And then there's a last question here, and if others, please feel free to put more in. We also will upload this webinar onto the Community Action Lab site. And so if people are seeing this in the future, they can go in there and add comments, and we will try to get answers for all those in the future. One of the things is a question here related to maybe some of the experiences you all have had. We've talked a lot, and Strong Towns will talk a lot about getting rid of parking minimums and getting, breaking those barriers down. Have you guys ever come across anywhere where there's been potential harms or drawbacks depending on the community needs from those types of concepts?
I haven't. I mean, I've heard complaint. I mean, here in Texas, we drive big 4-door dualies, right? Okay, we drive like big, bulky cars. We're sprawled more than you are in the Northeast or in the Midwest. But we're beginning to do away with parking codes and reduce the minimums in a lot of places. So I'm really proud of us for doing that. And you might hear a Texan complain that they got to walk 100 yards, but there's always parking.
Yeah.
There's always parking, and in fact, the places that don't have parking always are doing the highest numbers. Always,
Yeah.
With the places that you don't want to go where you can get too easy. It's no good. It's something about us as human beings. The challenge. Or we want to go where everybody else is going, and I think you've got to balance out the type of developments that if you're a developer, that your development doesn't get wonky, out lopsided. If you put if I took Tyler Station and put all restaurants in that and all bars, it would be a disaster on the neighborhood. Okay. You want to, as a developer or a town maker, you want to be a responsible town maker, and when you put things in, you want to make sure that they create balance and harmony with the neighborhoods around them.
Yeah, I would say so. It's interesting coming from the Buffalo perspective. So we removed minimum parking requirements in 2017. And the one thing we don't have are driveways. So I live in a house, no driveway. All my neighbors, no driveway. We all park on the street. Okay. And so the interesting thing that we've dealt with is snow removal, like in blizzards. I shouldn't even say this out loud because it's like scares me that they're gonna try to repeal. I don't think that they would, because it's not, we had to think about a solution to snow removal because the cars were on the street. So now what we're doing is we have these neighborhood parking lots that you can sort of like duck in when there's like a giant blizzard, and then they plow the street, and then you can pull your car out. So it's a really interesting thing. The other thing you have to do when you do minimum parking requirements, or it won't work, is you have to up the price of your parking in downtown, right? You have to combine it with upping your price of parking, so you encourage people to stop driving, and then you have to raise your transit options, right? And we're really lucky. We have 80,000 people in the city of Buffalo do not have a car. So we sort of come at this like this is a need, right? And but you got to double your parking prices. No one wants to hear it, but I was like, Yay, double it. Like, you know, it costs you $16 a day to park downtown now because of our minimum parking requirements. And that's what it should be. It shouldn't be $1 an hour or, you know, $6 a day or whatever. So that's another strategy, or some things to think about. But I haven't really seen much kickback or feedback. Everything is slow. You know, everybody thinks you're going to enact a ADU policy or a minimum requirement policy, and all of a sudden everything's going to explode. But that's just not the case for most places. You know, maybe Austin, Texas or something, whatever. Those are anomalies. But most places, you'll see a couple ADUs a year and a couple projects without parking a year. And it's just slow and steady, you know, and that's important to remember. What
That's
else we got
great.
here?
I think we've gone through all the questions, and I really, Bernice and Monty, I really want to thank you for taking the time to share your experiences with our community action labs. I learn every time that you guys share projects, I learn something new, and the projects that you have shared tonight are projects that I have seen in all 4 of this year's community action labs. And there are people that are accidental developers in all of these communities. So you guys create an incredible resource to help them build their farms. I'd encourage anybody that is listening to this tonight to go to Neighborhood Evolution, go to their website, download the 12-step process, see the types of activities and programming that they are doing, and follow them, because the communities they are helping, amazing things are happening. It's not just things are getting built, they're actually building communities, and it is resulting from a municipal side, significant revenue with lots and lots of little projects. We will put the recording up for this on our Community Action Lab site. We'll send out a link for it so folks can share it. We would encourage folks to share this because this is an important message for folks to learn. If you'd like to learn more about the Strong Towns Community Action Lab site, you can go to our website. We are accepting applications for communities that would like to engage in the Community Action Lab program. This is a program that allows us to bring folks like Bernice and Monty to a community, both virtually and in person, to talk about these issues and soften the ground and shift conversations so that all the hard work that everybody through Neighborhood Evolution has gone in their communities, you get a leg up, shifting that conversation and making it easier for folks to get in. And we'll be uploading this to our Community Action Lab and to our Core Academy courses that'll be online. As you go into all of these communities, there'll be additional resources. We'll make sure that we have the 12-step process up there. So as you see this video, you can immediately get to that. We'll also connect to some other content. There's some really beautiful stories of success that Bernice and Monty and others that we've shared tonight and that participated. We'll get some of those articles up that we've shared so that we can make it easy for you to find these successes and you can share them in your community. So I want to thank everybody tonight for your time and for the generous offer for Monty and Bernice to share the incredible work that they're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Edward.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, y'all.